50 business ideas of yours on that matrix. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I remember reading, that on that matrix of yours, the number one measure was that you need to fall in love with the business and stay in love with that business for the next 50 years or so. The other measure was that the business should be unique, and you didn't want to do something that somebody else was doing. One of the other crucial measures was that you wanted to, in a period of about 10 years, be at least the number one player in that business in Japan. And the fourth, I believe, was that you wanted to pick a business where the category itself would be growing for the next 30 to 50 years. You didn't want to choose a sinking ship. How much of this still rings true today?
Yeah, it's amazing that you remember all of those, and those are very, very important matrix I always keep in mind. And we are investing into many companies. Mm-hmm. Whenever I invest, I look at the eyes of the entrepreneur, and I look at the field that they are challenging. Are they unique? Do they have a passion? Do they have a great team? And is the market itself supposed to be growing? Those are the things I still check. As I was starting my own company, when we invest, we look at the company with that mix.
Mm-hmm. So you look at the eyes of the entrepreneur, and then you look at their idea and, of course, the category that they are operating in. When you looked into the eyes, for instance, of Kunal Behl, or you looked into the eyes of Ritesh at Oyo Rooms, what did their eyes tell you? What made you want to put money into those businesses?
Their eyes were sparkling.
Let me take that conversation forward with you. The last chat that you and I had when you visited India in 2014, and you made that big announcement that SoftBank has the ability, the will, and the capability to invest at least $10 billion, if not more, into India over the next 10 years. Have you continued to do you continue to believe in that vision and that ability, or do you believe that given the current global environment, given the current domestic environment, given where valuations are today, you may rescale?
Well, if I rescale, I will only scale up.
Okay. So what could 10 become?
I don't know, but at least in the last 1 year, we've already invested almost $2 billion. Mm-hmm. So if I have said $10 billion in 10 years, I have already done $2 billion in 1 year. That's overpacing, mm-hmm. right? And I think we would accelerate really seriously. More I know about India, every time I visit here, I get even more excited, more convinced. This is the country. This is the country of the...
What are you
21st century.
What are you most excited about India? And you've said this in the past, that you want to participate in India's hockey stick sort of growth as far as the economy is concerned, similar to what you did in China. What excites you most about India today?
Well, the people are smart. The 800 million young generation, over 35 years old, the IT, sunshine, the English speaking, the largest democracy country in the world. Mm-hmm. All these things make me believe that 21st century is this country.
Okay, 21st century belongs to India and perhaps to Indian startups. When we spoke last about valuations, you said that you're not concerned about valuations in India. And since then, we've actually seen valuations in the startup ecosystem correct quite a bit, especially over the last 12 to 18 months. You also said that we currently are in an investment phase in India, and so people should not get too perturbed about the fact that these companies, a large majority of these companies, continue to make losses. You said it's not the stage for harvesting. When will the stage for harvesting be? What do you see as the timeline? Because a lot of these businesses now, pre-IPO stage, a lot of these businesses nearing that 10-decade mark, and you've often spoken about how Alibaba made losses in the first 10 years. When do you believe that we now need to start focusing much more as far as unit economics is concerned, much more on the path to profitability, which perhaps hasn't been the case so far?
Yeah, I say 5 to 10 years from the startup, not profit or balance sheets that's most important. It is the customer acquisition, it is the business model, it is the customer satisfaction, the system, the overall business model. That should be created and get the momentum. When you get enough momentum, when you get enough scale, active user base, then things start to make sense in profitability. Of course, you have to have a mind from the beginning. What would be my end result business model will be? So you cannot just run to burn the money. 10 years from now, when we have enough scale, what will be the business model? How do we make the return? Of course, those business models should be created from the beginning in mind. But if you hurry too much, then it's like catching fish. You jump too quickly, the fish goes away.
Aren't investors also partially responsible for that kind of frenetic scaling up? Don't they push entrepreneurs as well to scale up, perhaps before they're even ready?
Well, we need a constant balance. Okay? You cannot just burn the money in a stupid way. You have to invest in a smart way. As long as you are investing in a smart way, then that's okay. But if you are spending in a silly way, you have to always adjust.
So let me ask you a candid question. As you assess businesses in India, your own opportunities in India, are entrepreneurs burning cash the stupid and the silly way or the smart way today?
It depends on the companies, of course.
Majority would be which way?
I think the company that we have invested, we have looked at, they are doing it in a smart way.
Okay, so going back to the matrix that you have, you also said that you believe in what I call the speed dating investment ideology as far as startups are concerned. The last time you were here in India, you were allocating about 10 or 15 minutes per startup, and you did about a round of 15 to 20 startups. And I believe
actually 30 companies or so.
30 companies or so, so even shorter duration. I believe that's how you actually decided to invest in Alibaba as well. You gave 10 minutes to companies in China, and Alibaba was one of them. So has it always been, have your big bets always been love at first sight?
Well, of course, my colleague, the team, do some homework before the session. In the case of China, Alibaba, we did not have enough team, so almost like an instinct based. But this time, I'm lucky that we have Nikesh and we have a team, so they have prepared. But still, even whatever the preparation is done, it's like fall in love with a beautiful girl. It's not just logic. You don't fall in love with a beautiful person just with the logic. The eyes, the feeling, the instinct.
So it's about a lot of it is driven by instinct and gut. There's also been a change in your investment approach in India, because when you first started investing in India, as Deep was pointing out, Make My Trip was one of the first few investments. InMobi was one of the large first few investments that you did in India. You were actually looking at Indian companies who were hoping to go global, who had much more of a global sort of business model in play. That has now altered, and you want to focus on internet companies that focus on the Indian domestic market. Why that change?
Well, timing has come. The stage has come that India economy will be big enough going forward. The internet, through the mobile smartphones, internet capabilities, all these things would make the domestic market will be big enough. Like China domestic market became big enough starting 10 years ago. Initially it was so small, but in the last 10 years it has grown to such a large scale. The next 10 years, India will repeat. And I think India could be even bigger in momentum.
Okay. Given the opportunities that exist, and you've got homegrown startups competing now with global names, global brands, in the cab aggregator business, for instance, you've got Ola taking on Uber. Ola, of course, is a company that you've invested in. In the e-commerce market, for instance, you've got the Flipkarts of the world up against Amazon. What do Indian homegrown...
Snapdeal.
All right, okay. And Snapdeal, I'll add that. So what, besides adequate cash, which of course you're going to be supplying in full measure, what should these Indian homegrown brands do to take on the competition that's coming in from the global north?
Okay. In the core technology areas and hardware areas, the global company can scale globally without changing that much. But when it comes to the service, like e-commerce or the car, whatever, or the content, the local culture becomes so important factor, because local culture, the way people live, the way people talk, the way people enjoy life, is very different based on the culture. So a lot of adjustments should be made, and the global company very often have just a defined model which is difficult to change. So the local champion, the local entrepreneurs has a huge opportunity to become a real champion. So I believe in entrepreneurs, in the local champion, then the vice president of the global company who would have to report his boss or her boss and another boss. And then when the answer comes down, it's already too late. So here is the opportunity. The startup companies in India, when it comes to the internet services, the contents, even the technologies, a huge opportunity arises.
Okay, so
and I must say, if it is a small country, small market, even though they have a very talented capabilities, it's too small to fight against a global player who has all the advantage. But this is one of the very few countries, like China and India. This is one of the very few countries that has a huge domestic market as the opportunity to fight back.
okay. You've seen many boom and bust cycles in your lifetime, in your career. At this point in time, there's a lot of concern on the fact that we are going to be seeing a lot of bloodletting. We are going to see a significant shakeout. We are going to see a significant correction. We are perhaps also going to see forced consolidation, because a lot of you investors are actually invested in similar companies. Are we likely to see investor-driven consolidation in the Indian startup ecosystem? Why lose money on two ventures when you can lose money on one?
Well, sometimes it makes sense to bring the power together to have an even bigger success, more success. But so that shouldn't be ruled out. But each entrepreneur can have their own passion and the growth by themselves. So I don't think investors should force something like that. It's rather the opportunities make sense if it makes sense to everybody.
But do you see a lot of consolidation in the Indian market over the next 12 months?
I would say more new startups popping up all over is more than the consolidation.
So given where valuations are today, given where the global economy is today, given where India is today, how do you see things playing out? A lot of people say, oh, 2001 was different, 2008 was different, this time the story is different, the fundamentals are more real, the businesses are more real, the business models are more real. Is it really different this time around? Or is that what investors say to console themselves?
Well, I would say every year is different, every market is different, but I truly think this is a real beginning. This is really a beginning, especially for India. This is the beginning of big bang of great market happening.
Since we're also talking about disruption and we're talking about innovation, I understand that when you were in college at Berkeley, you actually had an invention notebook. And at least while you were in college, I believe you had put on about 250 ideas. Your big thesis or your big bet at this point in time is that computers will surpass human capabilities and human intelligence. How soon do you see that happening?
Well, depending on all kinds of things, but one thing I think I am good at is thinking about 30 years ahead. 30 years ago, when we started a company, SoftBank, I said within 30 years, almost everybody will have a PC or a PC-like product. At that time, there was only mainframe computer, and it was just the beginning of PCs. But I said that this will be on everybody's hand. Now, what I would say next 30 years, the computer intelligence, the artificial intelligence will surpass humans' intelligence in many, many fronts. Many fronts. So it will be 1 million times faster to calculate, 1 million times more storage, and 1 million times faster to communicate. So when that happens, all the paradigm shift will happen. When that happens, the business model, the lifestyle, all kinds of platforms.
So what does that then mean if you foresee this future over the next 30 years? What does that mean in terms of the kinds of businesses that you would like to invest in, the kind of business that you would like to support and back?
The business models should have a lot of capability of analyzing data, collecting a lot of data on every aspect, analyzing it, using the power of computing, and create a lot of algorithm, deep learning, all those combined. The traditional business model should be disrupted. So the disruptor in thinking, disruptor in the way they conduct the business, those are the ones that I think we should.
So would it be fair to then assume that SoftBank would back or support businesses in AI, virtual reality, so on and so forth? Is that going to be the big focus area for you going forward?
Those are the tools.
Yeah.
Those are the tools. So it's not just a company who create the technology. It's the company who use those technologies and then disrupt all kinds of business models, business fronts. Those are the ones that can be a big fish.
Okay, since we're talking about Startup India and we're talking about what the government should do, and we've heard several of our ministers, the Commerce Minister, saying that the government only wants to play the role of facilitator, enabler. It doesn't want to sort of get in there and actually regulate these businesses. What do you believe the role of the government should be? And I also want to share this story because I believe when you celebrate SoftBank Day, one of the people that you honor is the bank manager who gave you your first loan to actually start SoftBank, because you didn't have any collateral at that point in time, and he actually gave you signed off on the first loan. So what is it that the government should focus on as far as its startup campaign or its startup policy is concerned?
Yeah, as already been said, whenever a government has the role of licensing something, that's a bad word. The license means the process of the inertia, of the passion. Whenever they want to start something, grow something, and they have to go through the process of licensing with someone who don't understand the new technology, the new opportunities, that becomes a bottleneck. So taking out all those obstacles, the free growth of the seed that's popping up, I think that's a very important thing. The second thing is the infrastructure. The startup companies cannot take care of the infrastructure. Infrastructure takes capital, big capital. So today in India, that lack, two things I think is lacking, is the mobile broadband infrastructure. Connectivity is too slow. So, and fixed line is the old technology. Fixed line fiber to the backhaul is important, but last mile connectivity should be wireless. That's the new trend. But in this country, wireless broadband is not yet ready and too expensive, too slow.
So the digital infrastructure, right?
The second one is the electricity. None of these technologies would work without electricity. Of course, the third one is the road and so on. But of course, these things, startup company cannot take care.
So fixing the infrastructure deficit. Let me ask you this, and a lot of people asked you this question on when Alibaba decided to list on, was there pressure on Alibaba to list and so on and so forth? And you always maintained that there was no hurry for Alibaba to list because at that point in time there was no need in that sense to actually raise funds. As you see the Indian ecosystem today, where startups are in their life cycle, in their business life cycle, in their financial life cycle, do you believe that we could see an Indian IPO, an Indian e-commerce IPO within the next 2 to 3 years or the next 5 to 10 years? What is the kind of broad timeline that you would look at?
Yeah, there's no hurry. Okay?
Because you're going to keep supplying the money.
Yes. The money is not the problem. The problem is when it becomes a public company, the company have to then shift their focus to quarterly announcement and all kinds of minority shareholders. So the mind that you have to spend shift toward more different things. So the first 5-10 years should be more strategic to become a bigger fish. So hurrying up too much is not necessary.
So you think at least another 5 to 10 years before we see an e-commerce listing?
Whether it's specific companies or specific field, but in general, rushing is not the most important thing.
Okay. I also want to ask you about, and we've had this conversation, I've had this conversation with a lot of people, whether it's Bill Gates or it's John Scully and so on and so forth, on how you approach money. And I remember you said that money is just one measurement, it's not the goal. It's the passion to make the customer happy, to see the big smile on people's faces, that's the nicest thing. Is it easy to be dispassionate about money when you're one of the world's richest men?
Well, by the way, in year 2000, for 3 days I was richer than Bill Gates.
That's right, you were. For 3 days, I remember that.
And then next year, our share price tanked 99%. So
how do you recover from something like that?
Well,
mentally.
Passion. Okay?
When you started SoftBank, your vision was to be at least the #1 provider of wisdom and knowledge. Today, what is your dream as far as SoftBank is concerned? What is the vision that guides SoftBank today?
Same. Never change.
So wisdom and knowledge and those oriented businesses are what you would like to bet on.
Yes. The information revolution this is the digital revolution in another way to say, or microchip revolution. This is going to make the power of the wisdom and knowledge utilized by people. This revolution is going to be 100 times bigger than industrial revolution, which has happened in the 20th and 19th century. So this 21st century is a real big success of the information revolution, and there are huge opportunities everywhere in this big way.
Okay, I want to ask you this because I think a lot of people will benefit from what you have to say on this. How do you cope with failure? How do you cope with a bet that doesn't work out the way that it does? And there's been several in your career as well that haven't gone as per your expectations and as per your plans. How do you cope with failure? Because not every opportunity that these young startups will decide to take on will deliver the results that they hope.
Yeah. So I've experienced, as you say, some success, many failures. We survived, so we are fine. But the captain of the ship have to make up his mind or her mind from the day one. I will be the last guy to support the ship. So whenever there's a real danger or a crisis, even I be the last guy, I will save the ship back again. That kind of responsibility, feeling, the guts, the concentration, that makes the real, strong mind, and that makes people follow you to, come back again from the crisis. That's the true leadership. So when you have that kind of leader in the portfolio of our family companies, I still like to bet on them. But of course, sometimes it's not enough. The guy is not responsible enough. The business model is not working. The customer is not repeatedly coming. Then we have to just forget it and move on. But we have to choose the entrepreneur with that kind of
commitment. Commitment and someone who's willing to take on that kind of responsibility. I'm being signaled we've got our last minute, so let me ask you this. What do you believe? You've spoken a lot about what makes you confident about India, what makes you bullish about India. What is the number one risk that you would advise people in this auditorium, in this room, to be cognizant of, to be careful of? Differentiation. Are you seeing enough differentiation in the Indian startup ecosystem? Would that concern you that we're not actually seeing that many unique businesses being created today? What would be the risk that you would want businesses here to take cognizance of?
Well, sometimes now actually Indian startups are becoming lucky because of the success in US, success in China, and so on. The investors are coming with big check. When the big check comes to those entrepreneurs, startup companies, sometimes they forget they already became rich without really delivering something important. So they should not misunderstand. Just by the investors writing big check, they are already a big fish. They should never ever misunderstand the company itself.
Okay, so keep the passion to grow the company. The fact that you're actually getting a big check, they might not necessarily mean that you'll get one tomorrow as well. So focus on the last 10 seconds. India or China?
This is very political question. I'm both countries.
That's a very politically correct answer, but Masayoshi, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much for your time and appreciate you giving.
Thank you.